Smith. Today we're going to be talking about framing your conversations. And by conversations in this context, I generally mean we're going to be talking about how to frame your negotiations that you have when you are trying to do business, or even if you have to have those really difficult conversations, which sometimes we all have to do. So what do I mean by framing your conversation? Framing your conversation really means that you need to understand what it is you want to get out of that conversation. So, if you're going into a negotiation, what is it that you want out of that negotiation? Sounds quite simple. We all go into negotiations with this sort of very clear idea. I want X, Y, and Z and blah, 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 and I'm going to get it, and this is, but it isn't that simple. We really need to understand the context in which we are talking. So let's take as an example, I am negotiating a deal, okay? I have a fixed price in my mind. I want to pay X for whatever the service or thing is. And in my mind, I know where I'm going to with this. But in order to frame my negotiation, in order to get it right, I have to be able to discuss that amount or create the parameters around which we are going to discuss. And in order for me to be successful, and this is the key point, I have to control that conversation. Because obviously, people going into the conversation from the other side, the people you're negotiating with, are going to have their idea around what it is they want out of it. Now, in order for your negotiation to be successful, you have to be the one controlling the narrative around that negotiation. And how do you do it? One of the important things to do is, first of all, be realistic. I mean, if I want to buy a car for 10 Rand and it sells for R1,000,000, I'm being unrealistic in that negotiation. So be realistic to start off with. The second thing is we need to understand the environment in which we're negotiating, and importantly, the people we are negotiating with. So we need to understand where they're coming from, or try and have a good understanding where they're coming from. Now, one of the hardest things to do going into negotiation, especially if we're all hyped up and excited and all of that, is to go, right, this is what I want, and blah, blah, blah. No. Take a step back, go into the conversation or the negotiation with a very open mind. And the easiest way of doing that is to listen, first and foremost, what the other person wants. So listen. And once you've heard what they want, then take their negotiation or their opening gambit and put it into your worldview, your framing, for want of a better word. So you know what you want. So in order to incorporate what they want, because obviously a willing buyer, willing seller is always a good thing, but you've both got to come away from that negotiation generally feeling quite good about having gone into it and having concluded the negotiation, and you both need to feel good about it. Right. So you get their opening gambit, you put in the parameters then around how you want that negotiation to go. So let's use the car analogy. You've decided you want to buy the car, and 10 Rand was probably a bit too cheap, but you've decided you want to buy the car for, let's say, 100,000 Rand. They want to sell you the car for 150, 200,000 Rand. Okay, there's quite a disparity around that. So you would have done your homework. You would have said, right, cars of the similar make, similar model, etc., are on the market for X, Y, and Z. Having looked at this car, there are X, Y, and Z problems with it, but don't always negotiate around the problem. Say, you really, really like the fact that it's a turbo diesel, or it's got this, or it's got that, or the owners put on go faster stripes, whatever it is. Give them something. Don't just put the vehicle down. Don't just break them down. Give them a little bit of something before you go into that negotiation. So understand their context, and then you will come out of it both feeling okay. Maybe you paying a little bit more than the 100,000, and they're going to be certainly selling it for less than their 150,000. But it's understanding, it's to create that environment, framing your discussions and knowing exactly what it is you want and what you are prepared to compromise on and what you're not. The same thing goes for having those difficult conversations. Now, be they personal or in business. If it's personal, a personal problem, and you know, often we have these things. It could be a relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be any of those sort of things. Sometimes if it's personal, we take on the angst that goes around it. We feel bad around it. So actually what we need to do is place the hurt, the anger, the upset, whatever it is when we're having these difficult conversations, place those, if you can, into a box and identify them for yourself before you go into that conversation. Because once you've been in that conversation, once you go into it, it's very easy to get overwrought and all of that, and you might not know where those triggers come from. And those triggers are the things that are going to blow this discussion. You're going to blow up, you're going to say something to hurt or to put the other person on the defensive, and that's where everything is going to go wrong. So just remember, when we go into a negotiation or if we go into one of those hard discussions, look within yourself, understand where you're coming from. If it's an emotional issue, make sure that you know what your triggers are around that. And if those triggers are pushed or those buttons are pushed, try and take a deep breath, take a step back, try not react to those triggers. Often, if it's a hard discussion, people are going to try and hurt you. They're going to want to get the knife in, they're going to want to make it hard. Don't let them. Try and just understand where they're coming from, primarily, but really, really understand where you're coming from. Have the most fantastic week. I know it's very hot at the moment, so enjoy the heat while it's here, and I will see you next week